The night was long on the broken world. The stars above were cold, shining like faraway diamonds in a sky that gave no warmth. The land below was full of ruins, old buildings, black smoke rising from fallen towers, and streets where no footsteps walked anymore. Once this place was alive with voices. Now it was silent. Silent except for the soft crying of children who had no one left. They were not human children. Their skin glowed faintly in the dark like dim blue light. Their eyes were large, reflecting the starlight. They had small, fragile wings on their backs, but the wings were weak, too weak to fly. They were alien children, left alone after war had stolen their families. They were orphans of a forgotten battle. In the ruins of a broken shelter, they huddled close to each other. Their stomachs ached with hunger. Their lips were dry from thirst. The youngest one whimpered, pressing his face into the shoulder of an older sister. The older children tried to stay strong, but their eyes also carried tears. The silence of the city was heavy, but in the middle of the night the silence cracked. It cracked with the sound of their cries, soft, quiet, almost too small to notice. Yet the cries rose into the dark sky like a secret signal, a whisper to the universe. No one answered. The oldest child, her name lost even to herself, looked out at the stars. She wished, with the little hope still alive in her heart, that someone out there might hear them. But she had already learned that wishes did not save anyone. Her parents had wished and they were gone. Her people had wished and their cities had burned. Still, she whispered to the others, "Do not stop. Even if no one listens, do not stop crying. One day someone may hear." The children cried in silence. Their voices were too weak to shake the heavens, but they refused to disappear. Far away, hidden behind smoke and shadow, something stirred. The ruins carried old sounds. Wind whistling through broken metal. Ash falling like snow, but tonight there was something new. A hum, faint at first like the low beat of a heart. It grew slowly, vibrating through the ground. The children raised their heads, frightened. Their cries stopped for a moment. "What is that sound?" one whispered. The oldest pressed her ear to the cold floor. The hum grew louder. It was not thunder. It was not falling stone. It was something alive, something moving across the stars. The children rushed outside the shelter. Their weak wings fluttered in fear. They looked up at the sky, and there, cutting through the darkness, they saw it. A ship, small, silver, and glowing faintly against the black of space. It moved slowly, almost shyly, as if it did not belong to the battlefield skies. Its light shone like a second star, closer, brighter, drawing nearer every second. The children gasped. Some stepped back into the shadows, afraid. "Is it the machines?" one asked, trembling. The machines of war had taken everything from them. They remembered the sharp claws of drones, the fire of weapons, the voices of soldiers who showed no mercy. The oldest narrowed her eyes. "No, it is not the same. This light is different." But even as she spoke, fear wrapped around her heart. What if she was wrong? What if this new arrival only brought more pain? The ship descended slowly, its engines humming like a lullaby. It was not a large warship, not like the ones that had destroyed their homes. This ship was small, fragile-looking, almost harmless. It touched down on the broken ground not far from the children's shelter. Dust and ash rose in a soft cloud, wrapping around it like a blanket. The children froze. Their tears were dry now. Their eyes were wide, their breaths sharp. For the first time in many nights they had stopped crying, not because the sadness was gone, but because something greater than sadness had taken hold. Suspense, fear, hope. The ship's door opened. A ramp slid down with a slow hiss. The children held their breath. A shadow appeared at the top of the ramp, standing still for a moment. The figure was small, not tall like the soldiers who had burned their homes. It was not metal, not a drone, not a machine. It was alive. Step by step, the figure walked down the ramp. Ash crunched under its feet. The children leaned forward, still hiding behind broken walls. Their glowing eyes did not blink. The figure stepped into the light of the broken moon, and the children finally saw. It was a child. A human child, alone. The alien orphans gasped softly, their cries now trapped in their throats. This was not what they expected. The universe was wide, filled with enemies and cold strangers. But here, before them, was something they did not understand. A human child walking alone in a world of death. Why was it here? Why was it alone? And most of all, did it come as friend or enemy? The answer was hidden in the silence of the night, and in that silence the children began to cry again. But this time their cries were no longer just for themselves. They cried because something new had entered their world. Something unknown. Something that might change everything. The human child stood quietly at the bottom of the ramp. Dust floated around him, glowing faintly in the broken moonlight. His clothes were worn, patched in many places. His shoes were torn, and his small hands held nothing. No weapon, no tool, only emptiness. He looked fragile, almost as fragile as the alien orphans hiding in the shadows. He turned his head slowly, studying the ruins. The tall buildings, the broken towers, the black smoke rising from far away, all of it reflected in his eyes. His face was not filled with fear, but with something else. A quiet sadness, like he too had lost something long ago. The alien orphans crouched behind a wall. Their glowing eyes followed his every step. None of them dared to breathe too loudly. One whispered, "He is small, like us." Another shook his head quickly. "No, he is human. Humans bring fire. Humans bring war." But the oldest tilted her head. She looked longer. The child's shoulders were heavy, as if he carried a weight too large for his age. His steps were slow, almost careful, as though he was afraid of breaking the ground itself. She whispered, "He is not like the soldiers. Look at him. He walks like he is lost." The human child stopped near the shelter. His head turned suddenly, his eyes sharp. He had heard it, the soft sound of crying hidden in the silence. The orphans froze. Their glowing wings twitched nervously. Then, with a voice small but steady, the human spoke. "Who is there?" The words were simple, carried by the wind, and yet they struck the orphans' hearts. His voice was not filled with command. It was not cold like the voices of the war machines. It was soft, almost gentle. No one answered. The human child looked down at his hands. Then slowly he reached into his torn bag. From inside he pulled out something small, pieces of dried bread and a flask half full of water. He placed them carefully on the broken stone in clear view. Then he stepped back, raising his empty hands to show he meant no harm. The youngest orphan whimpered. His stomach growled, the sound too loud in the silent ruins. The older children pressed closer around him, but their eyes could not leave the food. The human child looked toward the shadows. He spoke again, his voice quiet. "It's safe. You can eat." Still, the orphans hesitated. Their memories of fire and pain were too fresh. What if this was a trick? What if the bread carried poison? What if he called soldiers as soon as they stepped out? The oldest child closed her eyes for a moment. Then she remembered the words she had whispered earlier. "Do not stop crying. One day someone may hear." Was this that day? Was this the one who had heard? Her wings twitched. Slowly she stepped out of the shadows. The others gasped softly, but she did not stop. Her bare feet touched the dust, her glowing skin shining in the moonlight. She walked closer to the bread, her eyes locked on the human child. The boy did not move. He only lowered his head, showing respect, waiting. The alien child bent down, her thin hands trembling. She picked up the bread, broke a piece, and tasted it. It was dry, hard, but real food. Her eyes widened. Behind her, the other orphans crept out. First 2, then 3, then all of them, their little wings fluttering nervously. They gathered around her, reaching for the bread, passing it carefully, sharing in silence. The human child watched. His lips curved into the smallest smile. For a moment, he looked less lonely. The youngest alien drank from the flask. Water ran down his chin, and he laughed for the first time in many nights. The sound was small, but it echoed in the ruins like a bell. The boy's eyes softened. He whispered almost to himself, "Family." The orphans paused. The word was strange to them, heavy with meaning. They looked at each other, then at the human boy. The oldest spoke carefully, her voice rough. "Why are you here?" The boy raised his eyes to the stars, then back to them. His voice broke slightly, but he did not look away. "I was searching. I lost my home. I lost my people. I was alone." He looked at them with a strange light in his eyes. "But maybe I am not alone now." The orphans exchanged glances. Their hearts, broken by war, did not know how to trust. But the bread was real. The water was real. The boy's sadness was real. For the first time since their world had burned, the silence around them did not feel empty. It felt alive, and yet above them the stars still watched. From far away in the endless black, other eyes were watching too. Hidden machines, silent and patient, noted the heat of the ship, the movement of the children, the sound of laughter. Danger was coming. But for this one night, in the ruins of a dead city, alien orphans and a human child sat together. They ate in silence, their eyes bright with something new, hope. The ruins were quiet again, but it was no longer the same silence. Where once there had only been crying, now there was the sound of soft chewing, of small wings brushing against stone, of careful laughter trying to escape broken throats. For the alien orphans, the taste of bread and water was more than food. It was proof that maybe the universe had not fully abandoned them. Yet even as they ate, their glowing eyes never left the human boy. He sat apart, his knees pulled close to his chest, watching them quietly. He did not eat, even though his own stomach twisted with hunger. He only smiled faintly when the youngest laughed again. The oldest orphan frowned. She whispered to the others, "Why does he not eat? Why give everything to us?" The children did not know. To them, humans were a mystery, dangerous, powerful, cruel. But this boy was small, alone, and different. The youngest alien crawled closer, curiosity brighter than fear. His wings fluttered as he tilted his head at the boy. "What is your name?" The human blinked. He had not heard his own name spoken in many days. Slowly he whispered, "Daniel." The orphans repeated the sound, their voices strange but soft. Daniel. The name floated among the ruins like a new song. The youngest smiled. "Daniel," he said again, pointing with a glowing finger. Then he touched his chest. Lura. One by one, the others gave their names too. Short musical sounds, names that once echoed in homes now turned to ash. When they were done, all eyes turned to the oldest. She hesitated. Her heart was heavy, her memory clouded by loss. But finally she spoke. "Sira." Daniel nodded slowly. "Sira." Hearing her name in his voice felt strange, like a broken piece being put back in its place. But even with this small connection, fear still lived in their hearts. The children whispered among themselves, "Why is he here? Maybe he wants to take us away. What if soldiers come after him?" Daniel could not hear their alien words, but he could feel their doubt. So he lowered his head and placed his hand flat on the ground between them. His voice was quiet but steady. "I have no soldiers. I have no family. I am alone. Like you." The words, though simple, carried weight. They made Sira's chest tighten. Could it be true? Could a human child also know the pain of losing everything? Still, fear was hard to kill. She stepped closer, her glowing skin shining faintly in the ash. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at him. "If you are like us, why did you come?" Daniel raised his face to the stars. His voice trembled. "Because I was looking. I wanted to find someone, anyone." He paused, then looked at her. "And I heard your cries." The orphans gasped softly. Their voices, their weak sobs, they had reached him. They had been heard even across silence. For a moment, hope sparked like fire in the ruins. But Sira's suspicion was not gone. Her heart had been broken too many times. She moved closer still until she was standing in front of him. Her wings twitched nervously. "What if you leave us tomorrow? What if you hurt us?" Daniel looked at her, his dark eyes full of sorrow. He placed a hand on his chest. "I will not. I promise." The words were simple, but promises were dangerous. In their short lives, promises had often turned to lies. The other children crowded closer now, their fear fighting against their curiosity. They sniffed at his clothes, tugged gently at his torn sleeves, touched the strange fabric of his shoes. Their glowing fingers left faint marks of light. One whispered, "He is soft, not metal." Another giggled, "His skin is warm." The youngest laughed again, climbing into his lap without fear. Daniel's eyes widened. For the first time since his journey began, he felt warmth in his arms, not from fire, but from life. He held the small alien gently as if he were holding something precious. Sira watched, her heart torn between doubt and something she had not felt in a long time, trust. But the ruins carried more than just the sound of laughter. From far away, deeper in the broken city, an echo stirred, a faint mechanical whir, sharp and unnatural. It slithered through the night air, unheard by the children at first. Daniel stiffened. His ears caught the sound. He looked sharply toward the dark streets beyond. His body tensed, though he had no weapon to fight with. Sira noticed. Her glowing eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Daniel shook his head slowly, his voice low. Not safe. The children froze. Their fear returned in an instant. Memories of machines, fire, and soldiers came back like shadows crawling from the ruins. But this time, something was different. They were not alone. A human child sat among them, and even though he had nothing but torn clothes and empty hands, he did not run. He stayed, and that simple choice made the orphans look at him in a new way. Perhaps he was small, weak, and lost, but perhaps he was also brave. The night grew colder. The sound in the distance grew louder, creeping closer. The orphans huddled around Daniel now, their fear still alive, but mixed with something else. Curiosity. Hope. They had found a human child in the ruins of their broken world. The question was no longer who was he. The question now was, could he truly be one of them? The night stretched long over the ruins, but inside the broken shelter, something new was growing. For the first time in many days, the alien orphans did not cry themselves to sleep. They were not safe, not fully fed, not healed from their pain, but they were not alone anymore. And that changed everything. Daniel sat close to the children, his back against a cracked wall. Around him, the orphans huddled in a small circle, their glowing wings brushing gently against his arms. The youngest had fallen asleep in his lap, breathing softly, his tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with Daniel's own. Sira, the oldest, sat awake, her sharp eyes watching the human carefully. Her trust was thin, fragile like glass, but something inside her kept listening to him, studying him. Every time the boy smiled at one of the children, she felt the heavy chain around her heart grow lighter. Daniel noticed her stare. He did not speak right away. Instead, he reached into his bag again and pulled out a small object. It was round, scratched from travel, but when he twisted the top, a faint light flickered inside. It was a tiny lantern powered by something weak but steady. The children gasped softly as the light filled the dark shelter. Their glowing eyes reflected it like mirrors. Daniel placed the lantern in the middle of the circle. "I kept this with me," he whispered. "It reminds me of home." The orphans leaned closer, fascinated. The soft glow mixed with the natural light from their own skin, turning the room into a soft ocean of color. Sira tilted her head. "Home?" Daniel nodded slowly. His voice grew heavy. "My home is gone." "Like yours," the words sank deep. For a moment, the orphans were quiet again. Their glowing eyes fell to the ground, each child remembering burning skies and falling towers. Their cries almost returned, but Daniel leaned forward. His voice grew stronger. "I don't want to cry anymore. I want to live. I want family." The word trembled in the air. Family. The children looked at each other. They had lost their parents, their brothers, their sisters. The word family had become a wound, and yet hearing it in Daniel's voice did not hurt. It healed just a little. The youngest, still half asleep in his lap, murmured, "Family." Sira's heart squeezed. She whispered almost against her own will, "You are not one of us. You are human." Daniel met her eyes. He did not look away. "I know, but maybe family is not only blood. Maybe family is who stays." The words struck her like lightning. She wanted to argue, to protect herself from hope, but she could not. She saw the way the younger ones leaned on him, how they smiled when he spoke, how their eyes no longer carried only fear. Sira stayed quiet. The children began to laugh softly again, playing with Daniel's torn sleeves, asking simple questions in their own language, which he did not understand but still answered with nods and smiles. They touched the lantern, giggling when its light flickered. Daniel laughed too, and for a moment, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Belonging. But outside, the ruins were not sleeping. Far across the broken city, red eyes flickered in the shadows. Machines, thin and sharp, crawled over stone like spiders. Their sensors caught the faint heat of a small ship, the trace of new movement where none had been for days. Slowly, silently, they began to advance. Back inside, Daniel leaned his head against the wall, his eyes heavy. He wanted to stay awake, to guard the children, but exhaustion pulled at him. Sira noticed. She whispered, "Sleep, we will watch." Daniel shook his head. "I promised. I will not leave you." Her voice softened, the hardest it had ever been. "We know. Sleep, we believe you." Daniel hesitated. Then for the first time in many nights he closed his eyes without fear. Sierra looked at the younger ones. Their glowing faces rested peacefully against Daniel's arms. She sighed softly. In her heart, something she thought was dead flickered back to life. Trust. The bond was fragile, new, but real. A human and aliens broken by war sitting together in the ruins and calling each other family. But the night was not kind forever. Sierra's ears twitched. In the distance she heard it, the faint metallic whir, the sound that had haunted their dreams. Her eyes widened. She shook Daniel gently awake. He blinked, confused, then heard it too. His stomach tightened. The bond had only just been formed. But bonds are tested not in peace but in danger, and danger was coming closer. The ruins were not quiet anymore. Sierra heard it first, a faint metallic hum moving through the broken streets. It was the sound of claws against stone, sharp and steady. The sound of machines. Her wings trembled. She leaned close to Daniel and whispered, "They are coming." Daniel's eyes snapped open. He sat up quickly, holding the youngest child close. The faint glow of the lantern flickered, almost as if it too sensed the danger. The other orphans froze, their glowing eyes wide with terror. Memories returned. Flashes of fire, screams, the red light of drones burning their homes. Their breaths came quick and shallow. Daniel placed a finger to his lips. Quiet. The hum grew louder. Out in the streets, shadows shifted. A red glow appeared between the ruins, 2 lights, then 4, then more. They blinked like angry eyes, searching. Daniel's heart raced. He had no weapons, no armor, no plan. He looked at the children, trembling and small, and he knew. Running was the only chance. He whispered quickly, "We must move. Now." Sierra shook her head. "They will see us. They will see us if we stay," Daniel answered. His voice was firm but low. "Trust me." Sierra hesitated. Fear wrapped around her, but so did something else. The promise Daniel had made. Slowly, she nodded. The group moved. Bare feet touched the cold ground as they slipped out the back of the shelter, sticking close to shadows. Daniel carried the youngest in his arms, his steps careful but fast. The hum behind them grew sharper. Metal legs clicked against stone. A beam of red light swept across the ruins, scanning, searching. One of the younger orphans gasped too loudly. The red beam jerked in their direction. "Run!" Daniel hissed. The children scattered, their small wings fluttering as they sprinted across broken alleys. Daniel held the youngest tight and ran with all his strength. His lungs burned, but he did not stop. The machines saw them. A sharp cry echoed through the night as a drone launched forward, its red eyes blazing. Metal claws cut through the air. The orphans screamed. Daniel spun around, looking for anything, stone, metal, wood. His eyes fell on a pile of rubble. Without thinking, he snatched up a broken rod of steel and swung it as the drone lunged. The rod struck its head. Sparks flew. The machine staggered, hissing, but did not fall. The orphans screamed louder, crowding behind Sierra. She grabbed a rock and hurled it at the drone. It struck the machine's leg, buying them 1 more second. Daniel shouted, "Go! Keep moving!" The children obeyed, running deeper into the ruins. Daniel fought to keep up, swinging wildly at the machine whenever it came too close. His arms shook, but his eyes burned with determination. For the orphans, it was the first time they had seen a human fight, not against them, but for them. They reached an open street. Above, the broken moonlight revealed the nightmare. More drones crawling out of the shadows. Their red eyes multiplied, their claws scraping, their voices hissing in static tones. Sierra's heart sank. Too many. Daniel's chest heaved. Sweat dripped down his face. His eyes scanned the street desperately until he saw it. Far at the edge of the ruins, hidden between collapsed towers, was a small silver shape. His ship, he pointed. "There, run to the ship." The orphans looked at him, uncertain. The drones were closer now, blocking the path. Daniel's voice grew louder, desperate but strong. "Trust me, run." Something inside Sierra snapped. She grabbed the hands of 2 younger ones and pulled them forward. "Go!" she shouted. Her voice, for the first time, carried strength like a leader. The children sprinted, their glowing wings leaving faint trails of light in the air. Daniel ran after them, swinging his steel rod at any machine that drew too close. Sparks lit the night, the clash of metal and stone echoing through the ruins. One drone leapt, claws ready to strike. Daniel twisted, shoving the youngest orphan out of the way, and took the blow himself. The claws ripped across his shoulder. He cried out, falling to one knee, "Daniel!" The orphan screamed. The drone raised its claws again. But before it could strike, Sira charged forward. With all her strength, she hurled another stone at its red eye. The machine screeched, stumbling back just long enough for Daniel to rise again. He gritted his teeth, holding the rod tighter. "I'm not leaving you." The words burned in the orphans' hearts. Together they ran again. Every step was fire in Daniel's body, but he pushed forward. The silver ship grew closer, its faint lights blinking like a beacon of hope. Behind them, the drones hissed, dozens of red eyes glowing in the dark. The orphans stumbled, but Daniel pushed them up. Sira pulled the younger ones ahead. Their small family, broken and new, moved as one. Finally, the ramp of the ship came into view. The children rushed up first, their glowing wings flashing like fireflies. Daniel staggered behind, blood on his arm, his breath ragged. The drones lunged forward, claws outstretched, but the ramp closed just in time. Inside the ship, the children collapsed to the floor, gasping. Sira's chest rose and fell fast, her eyes wide with shock. Daniel leaned against the wall, clutching his wounded shoulder. Pain tore through him, but he forced a smile. He looked at the children, their glowing faces full of fear and relief. "We made it," he whispered. "Family stays together." The orphans stared at him. For the first time, their eyes no longer saw a stranger. They saw something else, a protector. The ship trembled as its engines roared to life. Dust lifted from the ruins, swirling like a storm around the silver hull. Inside, the alien orphans clung to each other, their glowing wings pressed tight against their small bodies. None of them had ever been inside a human ship before. Daniel sat in the pilot's seat, his face pale from pain, his shoulder still bleeding from the drone's strike. But his hands did not shake. His eyes were locked on the controls, sharp with determination. "Hold on," he said, his voice steady but low. "We are leaving this place." The orphans gasped as the ship rose slowly into the air. Through the cracked windows, the broken city grew smaller, its black towers sinking into the distance. Red eyes still swarmed below, machines crawling like insects, but they could no longer reach them. Sira stood behind Daniel, watching the ground fall away. Her chest ached. For so long she had believed they would die in those ruins, forgotten by the universe. Now, against all reason, they were flying. One of the younger orphans whispered, "The sky." The ship broke through the clouds. For the first time, the children saw the stars not from the ground, but from above. Endless, countless, shining brighter than ever before, their glowing eyes widened. Their small mouths opened in awe. The stars stretched forever, a river of light in the black sea of space. Daniel smiled faintly, though his body screamed with pain. "We are free," he whispered. The words felt heavy, like truth. Yet Sira could not relax. Freedom was not safety. She leaned closer to Daniel. "Where will we go?" Daniel's smile faded. His hands gripped the controls tighter. "I don't know." The orphans grew quiet. The stars were beautiful, but they could not eat beauty. They could not drink light. Their small stomachs still ached, and their hearts still feared the machines, Daniel noticed. He turned his chair halfway and looked at them. "I don't know where yet, but I know one thing: we will not go back. We will find somewhere new, somewhere safe." The youngest orphan, curled up in a blanket, lifted his glowing eyes. "Together." Daniel nodded. "Together." The word echoed inside the ship, filling the silence. For the children, it was enough to breathe again. They leaned against each other, their wings brushing softly, their fear shrinking just a little. But outside, space was not empty. Far behind, in the shadows of asteroids, red lights flickered. Drones had wings too, cold and sharp, built for the void. They followed quietly, their engines dark, their eyes glowing like predators. Daniel did not see them yet. He was too focused on guiding the ship, keeping it steady despite its age and damage. Sparks hissed from a cracked panel. The fuel gauge dipped lower than he liked. Sira's sharp eyes scanned the window. She spotted something moving in the distance. Her wings stiffened. "Daniel." "Something follows." His head snapped toward her, then toward the stars behind them. At first nothing, then the faint blink of red. His heart sank. "They don't give up," he muttered. The orphans stiffened in fear. Their glowing bodies pressed closer together. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapons, no strong shields, no fast engines. Running would not be enough. He turned back to the children. "Listen," he said firmly. "They will come closer. They will try to scare us, but you must not give up. Do you hear me?" The children nodded, though their eyes trembled. Sira clenched her fists. She stepped closer to Daniel. "What can we do?" Daniel looked at her. He saw not just a frightened child, but someone strong, someone who refused to fall even after everything was lost. His voice softened. You lead them. Keep them calm. I'll keep us alive. Sierra's chest tightened, but she nodded. For the first time, she did not feel only like a survivor. She felt like something more. The drones drew closer, their red eyes burning in the dark. Daniel pushed the ship harder, weaving between drifting rocks. The orphans cried out as the ship rattled, but Sierra raised her voice above their fear. Stay together. Family stays together. The words, once Daniel's, now belonged to all of them. The chase grew fierce. The drones hissed, their claws snapping at the air. The silver ship twisted, diving between asteroids, each movement a gamble. Daniel's body burned with pain, but he did not stop. One drone lunged too close. Daniel yanked the ship down sharply. A rock slammed into the machine, crushing it in silence. The children cheered, but more drones remained. Daniel's breath grew ragged. He whispered under his breath, Come on, old friend. Just a little more. His hand patted the ship's console as if speaking to it like a living being. The ship groaned, sparks flying, but it answered. Its engines flared, pushing forward with a last surge of strength. The drones fell behind. Their red eyes faded into the distance. Inside, the children collapsed in relief, their glowing wings limp with exhaustion. Some cried, but this time the tears were not only fear, they were hope too. Daniel slumped in his chair, blood soaking his sleeve, but his eyes stayed sharp. He looked at Sierra, who stood tall among the orphans. She met his gaze, and for the first time she smiled faintly. They had escaped. For now. Outside the window, the stars shone brighter, like a road waiting to be traveled. Somewhere out there, a new home might exist. Somewhere, a place where family could grow. Not die, Daniel whispered. The stars will guide us. The orphans leaned close to the glass, their glowing faces full of wonder. And though danger still hunted them, for one brief moment in the endless night, they believed. The stars stretched forever, quiet and endless. The ship floated among them like a fragile bird, its silver wings scratched but unbroken. Inside, the alien orphans and the human child sat together in the soft hum of the cabin. For the first time, no red eyes chased them. No claws scratched at the walls, only silence. But this silence was different. It was not empty anymore. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, his injured shoulder wrapped in strips of cloth Sierra had torn from the blankets. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. He looked back at the children, their glowing bodies curled close, some asleep, some staring out at the stars. Sierra sat awake, watching him. Her glowing eyes were sharp but not cold. She spoke softly so as not to wake the others. You fought for us. Daniel shook his head slowly. I fought with you. The words made her chest tighten. She remembered the way he had bled for them, how he had refused to leave, how he had carried the youngest even when his legs almost failed. Humans had taken everything from her once, but this human child had given something back, something she thought was gone forever. Hope. Sierra looked at the sleeping faces around her. Their breaths were calm, their small wings relaxed. They had not slept like this since the war, she whispered. They trust you now. Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then I must not fail them. For a while neither spoke. The ship hummed gently, the stars passing like rivers of light. Then Sierra asked the question that had burned inside her since they escaped. Where will we go? Daniel's eyes drifted to the endless black outside. He hesitated, then admitted, I don't know. The universe is large, but somewhere out there must be a place for us. Sierra's voice trembled. For aliens? For humans? Daniel turned, meeting her gaze. His voice was quiet but unshakable. For family. The word hung in the air. Heavy. True. Sierra looked away, hiding the sting in her eyes. She had once believed family was gone forever. But now, sitting here in the fragile warmth of the ship, she realized something new. Family was not always blood. Sometimes family was who stayed when no one else would. One of the younger orphans stirred, rubbing his glowing eyes. He looked at Daniel and whispered, Are you our brother now? Daniel froze. The question pierced deeper than any wound. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to answer. Yes, if you will have me. The child smiled and curled back into sleep as if the answer was enough to guard his dreams. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. A warmth filled his chest, one he thought he would never feel again. But the universe was never gentle for long. Far beyond, unseen by the children, a signal flashed through the void. The destroyed drones had sent a message before falling. A cold voice in the dark repeated their discovery. Survivors located. Human anomaly detected. The hunters were not finished. Inside the ship, the orphans gathered when they woke. They pressed their glowing hands against the window, pointing at the stars. Each child whispered what they imagined those lights might be. A home of crystal mountains, a sea of golden water, a world where no machines hunted. Their voices filled the cabin, painting dreams across the cold walls. Daniel listened, his heart heavy but strong. He wanted those dreams to be real. He wanted to give them more than survival. Sira finally asked him, "Why do you care?" "We are not your people." Daniel's eyes softened. He looked at each child, then back at her. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of truth. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. And I will not let anyone feel that again." The words broke something inside her. The walls she had built, the hard shell around her heart cracked. She whispered back, her voice shaking, "Then you are one of us." The orphans nodded, their glowing wings brushing Daniel's arms, their smiles faint but real. In the middle of the cold, endless universe, they had made something stronger than blood. Family. The ship drifted deeper into the stars. Daniel adjusted the controls, guiding them toward an unknown future. The fuel was low, the ship old, danger still followed, but none of them cried that night. Instead, they sat together, wrapped in the quiet bond they had created. A human child and alien orphans once broken, now whole in a way no machine could destroy. And though the shadows of war still hunted them, they whispered one truth to each other again and again: "We are family." The stars listened.